Welcome to the WORT Board of Directors meeting. It's Wednesday, July 21st, 2021, and it's 7:09 p.m. We have a quorum, but not everybody is here. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda. And I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try to share the agenda. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to approve last month's minutes, communications from the public, an email from Bert Zipper, which arrived just late this afternoon. Executive committee action since the last meeting, none. We'll elect officers for the next 11 months. We elected officers at the annual meeting, but they were just valid for 1 month. And we'll do a board orientation, but I'll try to do that in not too long of a fashion. For the staff people who are able and willing on this call to do a board orientation meeting, I'd like to keep it down to like 5 minutes per person. And Shelley had recorded a video message and I put a link to that, but I would always welcome more information from staff in written form that we can then put in the shared drive folder and have that information available for longer terms and let people think about it. We have a treasurer's report from me today. And a lot of reports aren't done. We have a report from Tom and so on. So at this time, what I'd like to do for new members is to say, in some ways, I'd like to do things like Congress does by saying, without objection, we're going to adopt that agenda rather than having a vote and a motion and all that stuff. So are there any objections, or can we adopt this agenda? Speak now and say, you need to add this, or you need to change this, or else that's going to be adopted. All right, we're going to make it so. Then the June draft minutes I will now share. How's this working out for people? Good show. All right. Share screen from the June 2021 draft minutes. We adopted that agenda without objections. And minutes, we approved the May minutes without objection. Did reports. We went into closed session, and we considered the proposal to classify Aaron Schultz to full-time, and we reviewed a job description and most of the closed session information you don't see there because it's closed session. Doug moved to go out of closed session. Marty seconded. The motion carried. During the closed session, the board voted to refer the digital audio / production director position description back to the staff collective and the personnel committee to revise the PD to include a fuller job summary, required qualifications, desired qualifications, and a statement of what competencies will give candidate preferences with reference to the recently approved volunteer and outreach coordinator position description as an example, and report back to the executive committee by June 23rd, 2021. That referral back to the executive committee never happened. And then at the end of the meeting, Rosie moved to adjourn, and Gil seconded that motion. So the issue before us at this point is, are there any objections to adopting the or approving the May, I'm in the wrong one here. The June 2021 draft minutes. If there are no objections, I will go on, but I would like people to go on, turn your cameras on and say, hey, or your microphone on and say, hey. Otherwise, I'm going to assume, Dean, go ahead.
A little just clarification. I believe that the 3 new board members were not board members at the last meeting, so officially and technically we should abstain. We weren't at the meeting.
Us three.
We
Okay,
can't vote on it because we weren't there.
sure.
All right.
It's just a technicality.
It's not a vote. This is a without objection. So hearing no objection, we will adopt the June 2021 minutes. So I've got 78 tabs open here, so bear with me. So I got an email. This is now the communications from the public section. I got an email from Bert Zipper, who proposed a WORT historical marker on Winnebago Street. And Winnebago Street, I think 2047, if I'm not mistaken, is where we started WORT. That building has been torn down. That tower has been torn down. A little aside about me, I'm a very tech person. I've worked at radio and TV stations all my life. And so radio and TV towers are, to me, points of reference. And so the day I drove by Winnebago Street and there was no tower there, I stopped the car. It was like, where am I? What happened? You know, my world has just changed. So I would love to see a historical marker on that site. The person who owns the property is open to the discussion. At this point, I said to Bert that I would ask the board what they thought of the idea of a marker on Winnebago Street. Any thoughts, Dean?
I think we should run, I think it's a great idea, and I think we should run this by Susan to see if this is an opportunity to do some on-air fundraising or some other form of fundraising for it.
That's a great idea.
Does the station have to pay for that if it's is it a proposed historical marker? I thought those were covered
Yeah,
by
I think
some other department.
it's paid for by the city. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's great fundraising. It's something that we'd love to have a picture of, and hopefully we would have input into making it a little less bureaucratic sounding than some of the historical markers have, so it has a little bit of a WORT flavor to it. I don't know the historical marker process, but I would love to see WORT have some influence on that.
Basically,
does anyone on the board know whether? Anyway, it doesn't matter. My input is I'm all for it, and I think it can be used for fundraising, but we can't fundraise for the cost of the marker because I believe that's covered.
Right. Stu, as a historian, what do you think?
Oh, it's obviously a great idea. And I think indicating to Bert that we enthusiastically support it, and we'd be eager to create a board and staff and volunteer committee to assist in the drafting of it would be a good idea.
Great.
Just a quick aside question. Anyone heard anything about the WORT building where we currently sit as being a historical site? That was thrown up, what, a year and a half ago or something like that.
Right.
It is mentioned in the most recent comprehensive survey of it's like an underrepresented. There was a survey that the Landmarks Commission did when I was still chair that focused on underrepresented communities within Madison, and our building is included in that. That does not put us on the cusp of landmark status. But it is included as, you know, as an old garage or an old, you know, industrial building of you know, the 19 teens. Oh, and Dave, I think the address was 2049, not 2047.
Thank you. Shelley comments on chat. Shelley, if you're not busy, she's
No,
Shelley.
Never mind. Keep going.
Okay.
just quickly, I thought the year ago thing that came up was Ward's part as being the LGBTQ community. When there was this discussion a year and a half ago of the early parts of query and other stuff. I'm just adding that to what I remember when that was being discussed.
Yeah, they focused on specific category areas. LGBTQ was one, and then we were marked for that.
I would like to request that any board member who would like to be on this, or any staff member who would like to be on this, send me an email privately, not through this meeting process. This says, I want to be on the Winnebago landmark, and then we'll proceed from there. Is that okay? Well, that's just to keep the meeting moving here. We're now up to the section of election of officers for the next 11 months, and we only have 3 of the 4 officers there. Unless, Marla, are you out there that I don't see you? I don't think so. And I texted Marla earlier and said, are you coming to the meeting? And so whatever is happening, she's not responding. I think that we need to open this election up because that's the next item on the agenda, and I don't want to hold it up any longer unless anybody thinks we should wait. Does anybody want to make a motion? Dean, go ahead.
Well, a point of clarification, if the current secretary is not here, one, did she want to run again? And if not, and what we might want to postpone the election of this officer, unless someone wants to take it. In the meantime, I can take the minutes until we get a clarification. And what do you want to do about the fact that the person that is the current secretary is not here? And it's my understanding that maybe, does she want to run again? And does anyone else want to?
Stu has comment.
Yeah, Dean, my understanding is that Marla, who has been a very responsible member of the board, was definitely interested in serving as secretary. I expect there's something has come up because she's always been very good about attendance and fulfilling her responsibilities. And I believe that Dave, Rosie, and myself and Marla are all interested in continuing to serve. Dave and I would be continuing after previous service. Rosie and Marla would be new members in these positions, and that all 4 of us are definitely interested and eager to serve.
Fine with me.
So the appropriate thing would be for someone who's not one of the 4 of us to make that motion.
I'll move that the list of candidates that Stu just mentioned, I move that they, what's the proper language here?
To elect Dave as president, myself as vice president, Rosie as treasurer, and Marla as secretary.
I'll second it.
Who's treasurer?
Rosie.
Okay.
Tom, are you a temporary or a permanent replacement?
Temporary. Oh, that's right. I can't vote, can I? I'm only temporary.
We need another board member then to second.
Sure, second. I will second Dean's motion to keep all the roles as they are.
Kai seconded motion. All in favor say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
And all opposed say no. Are there any abstentions?
Thank
Too
you.
late to say no, Dave.
What?
I'm just messing with you.
You are. Hang on.
I've been trying to call Marla and I'm not getting her. I'm just a little worried.
Yeah, I'm too. I'm too. So, um, I'm just making notes. Please forgive me.
My notes state that the slate of the 4 candidates were unanimously elected.
Right. I'm just recording that Marla's not present, Doug's on vacation, Marty's not present, Alita's not present, and Tom is a substitute staff rep. So I don't know anything about a substitute staff rep can't vote. I would say a vote is valid, but anyway.
I'll stay quiet. I'm fine with that.
Okay, we're fine the way we are. So I have been working a lot with Rosie on the finance issues. And she's also been working with Mary Joy, our bookkeeper. Anyway, the way I have things in the agenda, the next thing I was going to talk about was board orientation. I think I'm going to skip ahead and give my really abbreviated finance report. Basically, I went in and checked our balances at Heartland and Summit Credit Union, and our total balance today in both credit unions is $627,942.73. That's in the agenda for today's meeting. The total last month was $749,669.21. So we are 121,000. Sorry. 121,726.48 less than last month. But I can't tell you what those expenses were.
Dave,
Yes.
picking up on your last comment, this is really useful information for board and staff to have at our fingertips. But given the fact that we don't really know what it all means, I'm wondering how appropriate it is to have in a public document like an agenda.
This agenda is only visible to staff and board. But in fact, I don't mind. I'm perfectly willing to have the public see what our.
Yeah, but somebody looks at it and says, wait a minute, you've lost $121,000 in a month. What the hell happened?
Right. I understand that.
And we don't know. I mean, that's an alarming thing to someone who might see. And since we don't have an explanation ready at our fingertips to convey, I think that can lead to real confusion.
This won't be made public. This is just viewed by us. So.
No, you're wrong. Our meeting is a public meeting.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I thought anyone.
No, it's not. No, it's not. We're a private organization. It's not a public meeting. It's public to the extent that we want to make it public. We're not bound by any public records or open meetings laws.
But in any case,
Right. Well, I think I think what Stu said is relevant. We don't have a thorough financial report for this month that can answer any of these questions, and the report that you'll give will only raise more questions. So I think next month we need to have a full financial statement with a full finance report that we can address these issues. Otherwise, it's just a discussion that's going to go round and round.
Understood. The finance committee, which includes Doug.
We had our meeting today, and effectively what we did was introduce me to everyone. Mary Joy and the group started to give me an orientation. I'm working on getting logins so that I have the data, and a couple of other things. The only thing that I had for tonight, and it's not anything that needs a motion, I'm just asking for input. I think everybody has my Rosie at WORT email. what I'm looking for in the next week to 10 days is that anyone that's present here or watches the video or whatever, if you have something in particular that you'd like to see in the reporting, shoot it at me. Second of all, if you have something that you've been seeing in the reporting that you find valuable, I'd also like to hear that. I'm trying to work with the committee. We have, from what I've seen thus far, we've got a pretty big chore ahead of us, putting a lot of what has been kind of assumed to be or thought to be what you want into actual written format so that we know what the board wants to see, what the staff needs to see. And I'll be working toward not only having a more in-depth financial report, but also for those of us who aren't financially astute, something that's a little more in-out, plain simple. And to that end, I'd like as much input from everyone as I can get. Doesn't mean I'll be able to pull it all off, and certainly not in 30 days, but at least some direction would be great.
Thank you.
I suppose I should have said this is Rosie, huh? Sorry.
It says Rosie Ray on the screen, so we all know.
Rosie, if you need help pulling this stuff together to make like a dashboard or something, let me know.
I have it on my to-do list to reach out to see if I can meet with you sometime next week.
I kind of figured you did. Okay.
So I'm going to be in station Wednesday. I've got a briefing with Mary Joy and Marty, and then Susan. That's from 4 to 5 and 5 to 6. If you'd have time on Wednesday, that'd be awesome. Otherwise, I'll just come back a different day.
Nope, that should be fine.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Susan, in her staff report, which is in the shared drive and linked on this agenda, does have recommendations about reports that she recommends that be available to the board. So that's for you to look at, Rosie.
Yep. She and I have already started talking. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Boy, we're having fun now. So I'm going to start board orientation. Before I get into my long-winded thing, I'd like to pick on staff, and that means Tom, Shelley, and Susan, who are on this meeting, to give me a short 1 to 5 minute description of who you are, what you do, and
Adrian's here too.
Adrian, thank you. Adrian, since you started with A, you get to go first.
Okay, sure. So would you just like me to read the report?
No, just describe what you do and what your department does.
Okay, yes. So I am the volunteer and outreach coordinator. I started at the end of May. And so far in the summer months, basically what my job entails is coordinating with festivals around the city, performing promo exchanges, and recruiting volunteers to work these events. And that basically means creating a WORT presence there and recruiting interest, and also making ties in the community that we can reference later on, whether that be with other events related to WORT or their events, or if anyone's interested in coming to the station to volunteer. Other parts of my job are, I'm still learning, but basically I'm on the DEI committee and the bylaws committee, which I realize now. So I work with basically the station's drive to create more diversity and inclusivity, also to keep track of how we are working with our volunteers, keeping them safe and keeping the station covered. And yeah, I mean, that's just the quick overview there. But basically, if volunteers are coming into the station, Shali and Sybil and I are working on streamlining a process where kind of the volunteers will come through me, and I can then funnel them into where they're most interested. as a way to kind of make less work for the other departments. And yeah, basically any events I will have a hand in. So yeah.
Thank you very much. I would like to take this opportunity to point out to board members that we expect you board members to be ambassadors for WORT. And that means we want you to show your face in public and maybe even wear WORT paraphernalia. And that means all of you should be watching what Adrian reports and what events Adrian has coming up to be able to help out. Rosie has done a great job of doing that already, but all of our board members should do that. And also, board members, when we ever get back into fundraising on air, pledge drives and pledge wrapping, board members would be welcome to that. Susan, did you want to say something? Oh, no, okay.
I thought you were going in alphabetical order, right?
I just saw your icon light up, so I didn't know if you were trying to start to say something. But in any case,
I don't know how to do that, but yay. Okay.
Yeah. And then secondly, I wanted to point out Susan, who does our fundraising, and fundraising is a vital and integral part of keeping WORT alive. Tom keeps us on the air. Susan and Doug keep us in the money flowing. So there are many things that we have to keep doing to keep going as radio. And when I started to work on this radio station before WORT as call letters even existed, people told me that we would be lucky to last a month or two. And so far we've lasted more than a month or two. We've been 45 years now. I don't know, 26 years. So anyway.
Can I ask Adrian 2 questions about her position and stuff?
Yes.
So Adrian, 1, do you take volunteers for more mundane types of functions like filing and helping with stuff like that?
Yeah.
Did I still send them to you?
Yes. So I coordinate like receptionists who I'm actually still connecting with now. We're working on bringing them back, and we're thinking of sort of redefining that role a little bit that they perform. A lot of the receptionists have told me that they enjoy having extra tasks to do around the station, whether that's folding like pocket schedules for outreach or organizing files. I know that some of them enjoy helping Susan with pledge drives. But yeah, basically, there's also outreach to some organizations that have like senior citizens who want to go out and do something in the community for a couple of hours a week. And we have a few of them who come and like organize our CD library or the record library. That is another thing that we offer. But yeah, basically anybody looking for some time to volunteer will at some point come through me. I handle the volunteer database, keeping that up to date, making sure that everybody has been onboarded correctly. I'm also going to be handling background checks more, which is very important for the safety of everybody involved at the station. So yeah, I mean, you're doing something at WORT, I'll probably talk to you.
Yay. And then the other thing is when you're saying, wear the swag, where do we get the swag?
Well, I bet Susan can hook you up with some of that.
Okay.
She hooked me up when I first got there because I needed stuff to wear out at events. And yeah, I'll let her answer that.
It's stuff we got is when we made donations for t-shirts over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
I have never been able to make an $80 donation.
Oh.
No. Let me just speak briefly. We had a lot until the light bulb went off on my head, which big thanks to Dave Lawrenson for playing a part in that. We had always ordered the clothing items before the drive. We just guessed, we need this many large, we need this many medium. It never worked out. We never had people order exactly what we had in stock, and a lot of people weren't able to get an item. So I'm sitting on a huge, pretty large group of items from a huge variety of pledge drives. And as soon as I can get a volunteer in, which could be a board member, they need to be inventory divided up by sizes, divided up by women's and men's. And then my plan is to offer them to volunteers. A t-shirt would be $10, a long sleeve t-shirt would be $15, and a hoodie would be, I don't know, $25. And I think those are pretty reasonable prices. If somebody really is in a crunch, I am happy to entertain the, pay what you can.
Susan and I have also, oh, sorry, Susan, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, done. Go ahead.
She and I have also talked about maybe doing some special clothing, possibly just for the volunteers who help out, because we know that, not like she just said, not everybody can afford the $80 donation. So it is definitely on our radar, and we're working on that.
Hey, Susan, if you don't.
Right, I've had a lot of appeals to me where there should be a special price for volunteers, and I think it's something that is clear at other places and not as clear here. Usually of the volunteer department prepares special volunteer garments that have like volunteer on the back of them and some cool WORT design on the front, and those are only available to the volunteers. Those aren't something, I wouldn't copy that design as a donor and stuff. And if Adrian does that and charges a little bit more than the actual cost, it is a neutral financial transaction and would allow volunteers to have stuff that's really special for them. And not to be, I feel like my department is really donors. It's not volunteer. I don't have a volunteer department. And so the stuff that's there is for donors. Now, I have leftovers, so volunteers are going to be welcome to those at very decreased prices, but I don't anticipate in the future that I will be offering donor premiums to volunteers at reduced prices. I see that Adrian's willing to be active in creating a new, volunteer stuff for volunteers.
Adrian, let's put that in the Asana.
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea. Let's start working on that design.
Okay, no problem.
Is there a way that we can get as hosts also some of the designs or some of the things almost as if like to promo it as coming up? I mean, I know, Susan, you said that in the past when you order things in advance, it doesn't really work because of the numbers, but if there's any way that we do have things before the drive that would help promote the drive too, if we are able to, wear this.
I get the artwork before the drive, and the vendor that supplies me with stuff, the different vendors, put them on as if they're really on a model. It doesn't come out as a drawing. And so that's how I promote, by putting that on social media and in emails that I send to donors, etc.
Right,
I don't think having the host where it adds anything to that. We did that once, and we don't get the good lighting that they have. We don't have the things to get it to show to best effect, like people who are professionals. That's what they do for a living.
I guess what I'm saying is too, if we have events that we're going to, if we have designs that are old and outdated, then people can't necessarily get those things. That's understandable. But if we have, like, if we voted on, say, that bumper sticker that we were looking at or something like that, and we all liked that one design, maybe we could press up a few. And then so as some of us as hosts could purchase, and then we're almost like we're showing it on our body. And when we're in public, we are like walking advertisements of it. And if people say, hey, I like that design, we'll watch the next pledge drive because this might be coming up, or something to that effect.
Dave?
I'll think about it, but I think that's a lot of extra work on my side, because I'm already trying to, I'm in a constant state of signing up artists to work with us and come up with a design, and, and to have a very few of a design made is incredibly expensive.
I'd like to wrap this up.
Like, my minimums are 48.
Go
ahead.
Can we continue that, Susan, you and I even, because I might have a few ideas.
Please continue
also.
Offline.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Could. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Shally is next in the alphabetical order of first names. Shally, would you like to give a quick update?
Sure. Yes. Hello, welcome to our new board members, and hello again to our current board members. I did record a somewhat long video before I left for vacation, like literally right before I ran out the door. That was pre-coffee and somewhat embarrassed by that now. So you can watch it, it's out there, but you don't have to. My name is Shali. I have been here in this position for almost 2 years.
What's the position?
After Molly Stentz departed, I'm the News, Talk, and Public Affairs Director, one of the staff collective members. I've been at the station though since 2013 when I was in college, freshman, sophomore. I started in the news department here as a reporter. I did some reporting there. I engineered some shows. I was a music host of, is embarrassing, the Punk Kitten, late night punk show. I produced the Friday 8 o'clock buzz for several years. And then I was a paid talk producer for a public affair. Left, served on the board of directors, was a secretary.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then had a communications job at the UW, and then when the position appointing, but that doesn't make sense to you, the assistant news position opened up, I applied for that, got that, and then quickly learned that Molly was leaving and applied to this job, and then was an interim role for months and months. So now I'm permanent. So that's my background. I have other radio experience. I served at, I was the station manager, production director, tech director at WSUM. I also interned at Wisconsin Public Radio. So yeah, love radio, have listened to WORT since I was like 11, and Fort Atkinson, of all places. So the News Talk Public Affairs Director, obviously in charge of our news and talk shows, in addition to other public affairs things. So first and foremost, it's focused on programming. So we have several daily shows. We have the 8 o'clock buzz in the morning every weekday. We have a public affair from noon to 1 o'clock every weekday. We have the 6 p.m. news Monday through Thursday, an hour long. These are all hour-long shows. We have several syndicated shows, including Letters in Politics and Democracy Now!, which somewhat run on their own, but still require some staff for pledge drives and engineering. And we have other locally produced collective-based shows, in addition to a few other talk shows like Madison Book Beat by your colleague, and Mel and Floyd, and a couple of radio literature, things like that. So that's about 30 hours of, more than 30 hours per week. I'll point out that, you know, some of these shows are pretty intense. The 8 o'clock buzz every morning is supposed to be 3 guests for an hour. That doesn't have a producer, that or paid producer. Some of them do have volunteer producers like your colleague Kai. So, you know, it's a lot of managing. I'll just emphasize that what you hear on the radio, you're not hearing everyone that goes into that that show. So you hear the host behind the scenes. There's an engineer and a producer, sometimes a show DJ that goes into that. So it's definitely managing teams of people. Collectives have between 6 to several dozen people that are a part of a collectively produced show. So it's a lot of people. We have the Insurgent Radio Kiosk, which is also readers, engineers, a script writer, a collective of people that airs 4 times a day. We have all smaller bits like the Farmers Market Report, which I started before I was in this position. You know, so we have other things like that. I also am in charge of program acquisition. We do live remotes and special broadcasts here at the station, special coverage of events. Like when there was the insurrection, we aired that. When there were presidential debates, we aired that. we did a whole election series for local elections. Every election season is a lot of regulations, but also a lot of coverage. We try to interview every single candidate for local office and usually state office as well. And those do very well online. I also handle, I forgot to mention, our web editors, right? That's a whole other thing that in most cases, but not all, is not paid. So, you know, teaching volunteers how to post to the web, and that can be somewhat complicated. So making a guide, getting them set up, you know, all that administrative stuff. We have some podcasts, which I gave Rosie a long explanation the other day, but we can talk about more later. Studio operations, maintaining the studio, maintaining healthy equipment in there. We've had some issues over the past year. And then along with other members of this staff, I work on FCC compliance, regulatory matters, administrative issues, like I said. I do work a lot on web content, either fixing things that need fixing, or training people, or posting stuff myself. Social media, same thing. Newsletters. I started the Wort Weekly when I got here and have maintained it with recently some help from Doug. I do journalism, recruitment, and outreach. You know, speak to high school kids, maintain a relationship with other news outlets, as well as other think guidance counselors, or whatever the equivalent is in college, right? So maintaining a relationship with those folks, so they put us out there. Before Adrian, I basically did all my own volunteer recruitment and all the onboarding, like, and there's a lot to onboarding someone, and we don't have a good system. And I mean, not because of Adrian, but just that needs revamping, as you read in my board report. So, you know, that it's nice, it's wonderful to have Adrian here. Yeah, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I really appreciated Tom's board report. There was a part where he was talking about daily tasks. And if you read that section, that's how my day feels all the time, where you're in the course of an hour, you take a phone call from someone who's irate, to deal with a personnel issue, to hear something go wrong in a broadcast and run up to fix it, to write a report, to grants and whatever. I certainly have goals for the midterm and long-term future of the station, but probably past my time limit anyway now. So happy to chat with you about those. But yeah, hi, nice to meet you. I think I know all of you, but nice to meet you.
It helps that Kelly has no energy whatsoever.
Yeah, we have to drag it out of her.
Kelly, do you want to say something about your own supervisory responsibilities of other staff?
Oh yeah, I mentioned it in the video. Thank you. I do have 2 staff members who are part-time. The 6 p.m. news show is an hour long. That's where I spend a lot of energy, but there's also a part-time person who was in charge of making sure that gets on the air. Generally, we pay people when we can't fill it with a volunteer role with someone who can come in every day and commit 37 hours to it. So usually more, but underpaid. So Jonah Chester is our 6 p.m. news producer. He manages our reporters in addition to me, in consultation with me, as well as our feature producers who are in the second half hour of the show, which Stu is a part of on Wednesdays. And then there's Rochelle Wilson, who is a public affair producer in the same way. It's not something that can be filled by a volunteer. It doesn't work. We've tried it. So she makes the show happen every day from 12 to 1. And between those 2 shows, we are able to churn out a lot of content. It's reliably produced, reliably put on the web. We're able to get back to guests and not kind of be, you know, and so those 2 shows are very well managed because we have paid producers. That's no diss against our volunteer producers, including Kai and several other many other folks, but those shows just need cohesion, and so that is why they are paid. And they are huge assets and people I can depend upon. And they were in the station every day during the pandemic, making sure stuff happened and engineering the show. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Susan, you're next in the alphabetical list of first names. Would you like
I'm
to?
going to do a little shorter 5-minute presentation.
How long was that? That wasn't that long, was it? I made it bullet points.
It was over 12 minutes. So,
Sorry.
anyway, the question I hate the most is, where are you from? And that goes back to the fact that my dad was in the military and I moved over 18 times. And when I say moved, I mean to a different state or a different country, over 18 times before I turned 18. Wisconsin has been home since, I went to college at Carroll College, which I guess is being called Carroll University now, and then went to University of Wisconsin Law School, and have been largely in Madison since I went to law school. The term military brat, which you might have heard, has nothing to do with brat, although you might assume that if you know me. Being a brat at all, it is a term that came about because the status for families who traveled with soldiers in the British military, you were called a British Regiment Attached Traveler, and that became abbreviated as BRAT. So there's no pejorative connotation among military kids. We introduce ourselves as brats. Oh, are you a brat? You seem like a brat. Was your dad in the military? Not an offensive term. Let's see. Since graduating from law school, I've managed bookstores of all different flavors: travel bookstore, children's bookstore, college bookstore in St. Cloud, Minnesota, Borders bookstore. Ooh, there was one science and technology bookstore in there, which is kind of laughable if you know my technology background. When managing bookstores, when Borders and when Amazon basically killed even Borders and Barnes & Noble, which Barnes & Noble is staying open by virtue of the fact that its college bookstore business is propping up its retail business. So, they own a huge amount, have the leases for a huge amount of college bookstores. Anyway, when that started to kill bookstores, I turned to a program to become an intern with the United Way of Dane County. And I interned with them for 2 years and then became the development officer for the Dane County Humane Society. There were some differences that I had with some of what they were doing, and the job at WORT opened up in September of 2014, and I took it, and I've been here the last 7 years. I would think that many of you would probably think that our pledge drives are our biggest fundraising part of my department. But when I came here, my real goal was to significantly increase the monthly donations, because in a donor cycle, you have your one-time donors who start donating from year to year, and then you want to move them to monthly donors, which involves more of a commitment. You just try and see more of a commitment if possible and present information to them that hopefully makes them want to become more committed. Monthly donors are almost 5 times as likely to leave a bequest to an organization in their will. So, that's another reason. This sounds money grubby, and it really isn't. I really have tremendous respect for people who donate. I think if you don't donate at all, if any members of the board don't regularly donate to something, I think it's hard to understand what drives that kind of feeling, and can sometimes make it hard to fundraise because you're not sometimes in touch with that. So pledge drives, once the monthly donors go up, because you're usually drawing from your regular just one-time donors, and then they become monthly donors. So you're going to see kind of a shift in income. So your pledge drive income is going to go down while your monthly donor income is going to go up. So you're like, well, if it's just a wash, why put effort into that? Well, as I said, because of bequest. And the other reason why you put effort into it is because you want the people who donate one year to donate the next. The national average for people who donate to one nonprofit and donate to that same nonprofit the next year, which is called your retention rate, is 45%. That's what it was at WORT from 2001 through 2014. Pretty much year to year, we were anywhere from 43 to 48%. I can't go back further than 2001 because I only have electronic records that late. Now, every year since 2014, we've been increasing until last year we hit 68% retention rate. But the year before that, it was 66. It's been building. And that's because monthly donors have a 98% retention rate. If they give one year, they're 98% likely to give the next year. So even though there's some equivalency, you do see a rise. You know, you do get more money because monthly donors tend to increase. They'll say, yeah, I'll give you another $2 each month, which is $24 a year. Whereas some people have set amounts like, I'm going to give $100 to WORT this year. And a lot of times they don't adjust those figures to think about, I've been giving $100 to WORT for 10 years. Maybe they need a little more money. Maybe their expenses have gone up. So pledge drives for this year, my projection is that pledge drives will raise $160,000. Monthly donations will amount to $158,000. Direct mail contacts for lapsed donors, those letters that you see before a pledge drive, we count them in the pledge drive until it's 2 weeks afterwards. If we're still getting them 2 weeks afterwards, my understanding of accounting and what our auditors have told us is that you have to cut that off because it's an accrual and blah, blah, blah. So those then go into the direct mail category. Direct mail is estimated to be $134,000 this year. Car donations, $30,000. Major gifts, $55,000. And then you have things like employer matching, where there's a lot of online platforms where businesses can just say, you, employee, must donate through this platform to any nonprofit so that there is an independent record that you made the donation, because they don't trust nonprofits to ever say no, like, ooh, our employee says they gave you $100. If you say yes to this, we're going to give you $100 too. So they set up an independent verification. So employees can donate through there for these businesses that set it up, and then the business matches the money, and we get that in through these online platforms, which might either be via check or via a electronic fund transfer. And the last thing is I have an assistant, Karen. She averages, I believe, about 15 hours a week, and she enters all the donations into our database. Well, I do it when we're really crushed, like at the end of the year or during pledge drives. I'll help her with that. And she also works on reconciliations with our bookkeeper, reconciling Civi, the donor database, to our QuickBooks at the end of each month. Done. Any questions?
I believe that was 10 minutes long.
Shut up, you. It just felt faster to everyone,
I was
Sally.
gonna say the same thing.
Nobody has any questions? Great.
I'm sure there'll be more, but I wanted to start out this new board with a basic understanding of what's going on. I don't think it's difficult to explain how complex the money flows are. I underestimated how difficult it was for years, and so when the mail comes every day, Doug and Tom open the mail now. Our procedures now require two people. We log every check that we receive, but we can't just deposit those checks and say, yep, that's money. We have to figure out, is that a response to a pledge drive? Is that an unsolicited donation? Is that a payment for underwriting from Doug? Is that a, whatever. So it's a complex process that Susan and Mary Joy and Tom all work on, and everybody else at the station in some way or other. So we really don't respect enough about how complex the process is. And anyway, thank you very much, Susan.
You're welcome.
Tom, I think you're next.
Of course I am. Well, if you read my report, you know, in an hour, everything could change really ridiculously. If it has a wire connected to it, a button on it, or a lever on it, it's pretty much my responsibility.
Or a pipe.
Or a pipe, or a rooftop membrane cover, or I mean, it's a really weird job. Um, Mainly, it's to keep us on the air, but it's also to keep leaks from happening in the basement. It's also to, you know, rearrange rooms and redo newsrooms, right, Charlie? I come
You
from
rock.
I come from Isthmus, actually, right before WRT, where I was the tech guy at Isthmus for 14 years. And through cost cutting, they decided to outsource the technical part of Isthmus. Outsourcing never works really well. Well, that's a whole different story. And prior to Isthmus, I was in corporate America, which is hard to believe considering how I look, but I was pretty good in corporate America. And now, since coming to WORT, I knew virtually nothing about keeping a radio station on the air. I was good in IT, I was good with networking, but I knew nothing about the ins and outs of audio. So, hi, cat. Sorry, my cat just jumped on my lap. One of the major things that I found out after starting at WRT is that my brain actually can still function. And I've learned so much about radio in the last 2 years, about 2+ years now. It's amazing to me. Learned an incredible amount about FCC regulations and EAS regulations and everything that goes along with all the root needs of keeping a radio station on the air was completely foreign to me, but I was able to figure it out with a lot of help from the engineering committee, which huge shout out to the engineering committee. I could not have done this job without those folks. So if you know anybody that's technical, tell them to contact me and I can bring them on board and we can get them involved in this whole thing, because it's actually a really good group. As facilities director, I've got Lois, who's my part-time employee that I oversee for helping to keep the station clean and tidy and the trash out to the street and everything. And it's been a really weird 1.5 years for Lois because there's been hardly any of us in the station. Things will pick up again now, but hopefully everyone will combine to keep the station clean, wiping things down, making sure that things are neat and clean, just not only because of the pandemic, but that's a good impetus to actually just like clean up after yourselves. And that's about it. And I think I took 4 minutes.
Click on mute. Thank you, Tom. Any questions from the board to the staff? Okay. I don't want to go on very much. I wrote 3 pages of board orientation notes, and I'm not going to go over those. I'm going to emphasize a couple of main points. There is a special WORT internal calendar to which staff and board should have access. Please use that to keep track of vacations, pledge drives, events, and so on. And in the past, we've been pretty lax on that, but then we don't know when the next pledge drive is coming or when Doug is on vacation or all those other kind of questions. So if we all use that shared calendar, and if you don't have, if you don't see that when you open up Google Calendar, I will be more than happy to set up a one-on-one meeting with you to show you how that all works. I'm going to show you a demo here of dealing with emails and opening up apps. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do a quick screen share, and that will be this one. So here's what my WORT email looks like. So you see all my messages here, and you see up here, it says Google account Dave Devereux Weber. Now, if you want to change Google accounts, well, I should show you that not only that, but I also have my own email as DDW services, and I have my own Gmail account that's just for general stuff. And you can have multiple tabs like this. There's my little Dave Devereux Weber Gmail account. There's my DDW services. I used to do consulting, but I'm a retired consultant. And here's my Word account. And you can change that by clicking on that icon, and you can see any one of these accounts and switch to them, or you can add another account. So if you have 5 or 6 Gmail accounts, you can open them all in tabs. So next to the identity account information here is the Google Apps little 3x3 dot matrix here. And if you press that, you can get to all sorts of things like My Business, Gmail, Drive. So that's how to get to Google Drive. And here's how to get to Google Calendar. When you click on this app selector, it not only opens up Google Calendar, but it should open it up for the account that you're in. So your work calendar. I also have a DDW, or my Gmail account has its own calendar that's separate from this one. So, and I'm happy to do a one-on-one with anybody to show you more about how to do that. So I have them down in this pull-down menu here, and it's got 5 different items here. And at the very bottom, it says open all in tabs. And so I can click on that when I open up a brand new web browser, and all 5 accounts open up. I don't have to log into them. It just opens them all up and I'm there. So it really makes things faster. Any questions? Send me email if you want me to do a one-on-one session with you on this. I'm happy to do that because it only takes a few minutes.
If you can't go to Dave, I can do it as well.
Great.
Because I do not have 147 tabs open at one time.
That's wonderful. Some people are less crazy.
Like Dave.
Yeah. Who's more crazy. I want you all to be our WORT ambassadors. I want you all to listen to WORT all the time. By listening all the time and by knowing who does the news and who does the music. Unfortunately, Sybil's not in this meeting, but oh, I should talk to you a little bit about contacts. Let's do contacts. So I'm going to share a screen again. Sorry, guys, but these are important things to get to.
Dave, are you going to do those lists too? The contact list, so we know who gets what? Or are you just going to send that out in a document?
I don't know how to deal with that. That's a good question. I can show that, yeah. So again, I'm sharing the screen. You're seeing my WORT Gmail account, right? So if you go up here and you go to contacts, that opens up a new tab. And these are my contacts. But the neat thing about in the WORT Google Apps, or what do we call it now, Google Workspace, we can share contact information. So if you go into this, you can find the contacts for all the people who are on the board and all the people who are on the staff. So you don't have to say, Dave, what's Shally's number? Because it's here. So again, if you have any questions about that, let me know. Tom, I've got 5 different WMTV contacts in that shared thing. We rent transmitter and tower space from WMTV, so we want to be able to call them when problems happen. So
don't Tom Whedon, he's retired now.
Yeah. Oh, you tried?
No, he's just in there still.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could probably change that. So I will close this tab. We go back to this tab, and let me see if I can do groups. So again, from this Google Apps thing, you can go down to groups, and I'm opening up groups, and it shows all of the groups that I'm involved with, but you can also see all groups. So you can see who's on all of the WORT groups. These are not secret things. You may not be able to change them, but you'll be able to see them. And it seems overwhelming at first, and but it's not. So, Rosie, does that help you there?
Yep. Because if you click on the details, it'll tell you. So if you're trying to email, let's say the board and staff, there's a group. If you're trying to email staff, there's a group. And that way we know who we're talking to rather than just typing in the two, which I think sometimes we're doing.
If you email reports at wordfm.org, that does staff and board both at the same time.
And then there's all staff.
Which is full-time staff and part-time staff.
And then there's staff.
Which is just the staff.
Just the full-time or just both the same? So all staff and staff are the same?
No.
All staff is full and part-time. Staff is just the full-time.
Got it.
6 of us right now. Well, 7 because Aaron's on there as well.
Okay.
I will also say if you try to search in here for someone's email address for any group that is not a WORT-FM.org address, you will not find them. Google does not allow you to search for external email addresses. I don't know why, but they don't.
Okay.
If they've been entered into our master list, then we can find them. But
nope.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
If you go to fans and try to search for somebody with a yahoo.com address, you will not find them whatsoever.
Okay.
Which is really annoying, but
yes,
there it is.
So I know I'm overwhelming people, but at least you'll remember that we talked about this and you know that you can ask about this. So I will click that close. I will stop sharing.
Can I recommend like 2 or 3 things?
Yes.
Sorry, not to drag it on. If you need to email the staff collective, that's staff@wordfm.org. If you need to, the staff collective is the 6 full-time permanent members. If you need to email all of the staff, including the part-time members, that's allstaff@wordfm.org. And if you need to contact the board and all staff, including the part-time people, then you can send it to reports. Keep in mind that your emails to reports go to all of the staff, including our part-time producers. And then the shared drive you're probably getting to, but that would be helpful. I think people have encountered issues there and sharing issues there.
So the only way to email just board and the collective is board and staff as separate addresses.
We could change that, but that's how it's set up right now. And I think people forget that. And keep in mind, some of our substitute producers are on that. So
not on the staff.
On the all staff.
On the all staff, yes. So board and to get to the board and the collective, you do board@wordfm.org and staff@wordfm.org.
And who gets reports?
So
Sorry?
reports is a list of lists. Reports is a list of lists. It includes staff, board.
And all staff.
And all staff. And all staff includes part-time staff and staff. So
part-time staff and full-time staff. Yes.
Thank you, Shelley. I got it.
Okay.
You just read over what you just said, the reports. Sorry, I think
I can just write it out, but
Okay.
you might want to, or I can email it out, but it's helpful to know when you're trying to contact people who you're contacting.
Okay. Thank you.
And it gets overwhelming when we start to have back and forth to everybody and it gets to 16 or 17 messages, it gets messy. I would like to really emphasize that I want board members to review what's in the shared drive folder before the meeting, because if we have to explain things at the meeting, it makes our meetings last forever. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between Google Drive and Google Shared Drive. A Google Drive file is owned by you. So if you create a Google document, it's in your Google account, in your private Drive, and nobody sees it unless you share it with them. If instead you create a file that's in a shared drive that is shared by board, then every board member automatically gets to see that document. You don't have to invite them to it. So that's what we do now with our all of our board meeting information is it's in Google Shared Drive. And so let me, if I can, show you how to get to that. We'll start to do this. We'll start to do that. We'll do this little shared screen thing again. So, so you've got, when you start with Google Drive, you've got My Drive, which is files that belong to you, and shared drives, which is.
I have the wrong screen going.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All we have is the minutes.
Thank you.
No worries.
Tom, I don't have too many.
Bullshit.
In that case, you had too few.
What is that now? Does that show you board and staff board meeting information?
Yes, sir. Yep, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
And then shared with me is this other category. So if I create a file and say, gosh, I'd like to share that with Stu, I could share that file with Stu, and then Stu and I are the only people who see it. So these are all the files that are shared with me, and they go way back to a long time ago. But the problem with these files and shared with me is that when I retire and leave, or when I get hit by a beer truck and thousands of gallons of beer drown me, those files still belong to me, and Tom can't just move them over somewhere else without my permission. And we used to do all of our WORT information on My Drive type files, and so I've had a problem moving them all over. So that's why we use shared drive. So in the shared drive, we have the 2020 audit information, which I can get rid of pretty soon because that was background information for that. We have archives, and there's a section for board only. There's a section for board and staff. And so if I go over here to shared drive and click on this little arrow, it opens up that same list that this list also appears here. Cincinnati Insurance is the insurance company that insured us when the shooting happened, and we're still doing active things with them. Board and staff is this menu here. So if I click on that, we have another long list of things. And then we have board meeting, and you can't quite read information because you have to stretch it out a little bit. So I'm going to stretch it open a little, board meeting information. So I click down on that, and you see every year. And so you get down to 2021, and I click that arrow, and we get down to July, and I click on July, and that's the shared drive for today's meeting. So that's a quick overview. Again, call me, email me, and say, Dave, let's do a quick Zoom meeting, and I'll go through that with more details, and we can help understand questions like that. Sorry about the longness of this all. And I think I'm going to stop there with my board orientation information, because the next section is committee assignments. Being that it's 8:22 and we've been going at this for over an hour, I think I need to give people a bio break time. So what I'm going to do is, it's 8:22 now. I'm going to stop until 8:30 to give everybody a chance to get a quick sip of water, go to the bathroom, whatever, and come back. It's hard to deal with all this information in such a long meeting. It's been very intense. So if there's no objection, I'd like to stop for a few minutes, okay? Stand by, and we'll join back together again at 8:23. I'm going to stop the recording. We're back in session. It's 8:30. I would like to go over committees real quick. Well, I'd like to go over committees, but it's not going to be as quick as I'd hope. So let me show you the document that I linked in the shared drive, and we can go over that. And does everybody see Board of Directors Committee and Personnel?
Yes.
Good, good. Okay. So first in this document is executive, and whoever pointed out that I had misspelled Raboyak, thank you very much. Whenever anybody sees an error, you can correct the error. This committee is comprised of officers. So we already know who's on that committee. The next committee is Finance Committee. Rosie is there as the treasurer. I'm there because I volunteered. Mary Joy is there. Susan, Doug, and Alita are there. Anybody else is welcome to be on the Finance Committee.
Dave Marty's on there too.
He should be on there, but he's not. So,
Dave, add me also. This is Dean.
okay. Okay, I don't remember how to spell Marty's last name, but I'll get that later. Anybody else want to be on the finance? Hearing none. Personnel Committee. Whoever is the person who is telling me these things, you have a keyboard because you can type the comments. So
And Dave, if you're taking volunteers, I'd like to serve on personnel. This is Stuart.
okay. Any other?
Dave, I have
Yes.
a question.
Yes.
When I first came here, I was told that board members needed to pick 2 committees that were not like interim committees or, work groups, but actual committees. Is that a real thing, or was that just something Norm told me?
I don't know if that is a requirement in a policy or a bylaw.
It's not a bylaw.
It is. It's not in the bylaws, but it is supposed to be complied with. Yes. I mean, I can look up what the source that is, but that is my recollection.
All right. Thank you. So for board members who are present and board members who are not present, we'd like you to be on at least 2 committees. Anybody else for personnel? Community Advisory Board is one. Go ahead, Susan.
I just know that there, in some cases, like I had thought that Marla had indicated, I can wait for her to be there, but just because somebody isn't speaking up doesn't mean that there isn't another person that wants to be on personnel.
Marla is on personnel. Sorry.
Those are the automatic ones. I don't see the thing. Thank you.
Yeah. We got to get you a computer at home so you can see these things.
I'm at work.
You don't have to show your face. You put an icon up, but then you can see what we're talking about.
She's got the camera. She's got everything.
Tom, don't rat me out.
Well, do one of those things that give you bunny ears or whatever, you know.
I want that cat thing that the lawyer had. That's what I want.
Community Advisory Board is mandated by the FCC. It's not just by our bylaws, and it's people who are not board members and are not staff members. It's outside people to give us an outside evaluation of what we are doing. The next committee is policy and bylaws. Oh, by the way, there is a board liaison to the CAB, and that's Megan Flowers. Adrian is on the committee as volunteer and outreach coordinator. So, policy and bylaws committee. Again, I'm going to stop and put a bookmark in what I'm saying. In what I like to see as a board organization is that the board not handle the minutia of every detail that comes along. So when an issue comes along that is something, for instance, regarding policy or bylaws, it goes to this committee. This committee hacks it out, and anybody can go to committee meetings. That's why I want the meetings on the calendar so that people can tell when something is happening. And if there's an issue that you want to contribute to, go to the committee meeting. And because we're doing them all on Zoom or on Google Meet, they're easier to get to than if you have to drive somewhere.
And Glenn should come off of this list.
Yeah.
And Adrian should be listed. And just to clarify, the committee has gone to a more of a collective leadership function. So we do not have an individual chair, but we're operating by revolving facilitators and note takers. So there's no individual chair.
Very good. Are there any other people who are interested in being on the Policy and Bylaws Committee? Hearing none, thank you. Elections Committee.
You can put me on there. This is Dean.
I'm trying to focus on getting spelling of names right. Fundraising Committee is not really active, so we're not going to recruit for that. And Public Relations, Outreach, and Marketing is also not active at this time, so we're not going to do that. And Regulatory Compliance is not really active. Right now, Tom and Shelley work on that issue. And any of these inactive committees, if you think they should be active, it's your prerogative as a board member to say, hey, let's make that active again. Engineering Committee.
I do want to mention that there is a fundraising work group, not a committee.
Okay.
And we kind of meet, it's like Doug's events committee, we meet as needed to discuss issues. And if someone's interested, they can get a hold of me. It is comprised of Carol Cohen, who is a retired grants person, me, Nancy May, and once in a while John Kraniak. And we speak in a lot of shorthand because we're all fundraising people who have been paid to fundraise. So just a heads up that.
Have I spelled her? Well, you don't have a monitor. So C-O-H-E-N, Carol Cohen?
Correct.
And
you know how to spell Nancy May, right? M-A-E. Mm-hmm. And John Kraniak. And myself. And Jane Richard recently said she'd like to join, so.
So this is Dean, excuse me. Why is this fundraising group not the fundraising committee? And second, fundraising is one of the main responsibilities of the board. And if there's no board member, if you want to now make this the fundraising committee, we can't rename it right now, David, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You know, we can't, this is by bylaw committee, the fundraising committee is in our bylaws from my understanding, that's why it's here, even though it's inactive. But we do have a fundraising work group.
It's not in the bylaws. I think it's in the policy, but
Okay, well, all right, one way or another, we can't rename it right now without a vote. So why, I think that that's one of the issues that was discussed quite a lot in the meeting, the general meeting we had. And I think that we should consider reactivating this committee and ask that work group, ask a board member to join that group so that it's an official fundraising committee and that we get reports back to the board on it. And then I think that will also help the board get more up-to-date, accurate information on the needs that these 5 people are what they're working on and the needs that they would have to meet the goals that they discuss. So I think that we should elevate this. And,
well,
I don't know how to go about doing that. I don't know if we can just put them on a committee without asking them. I'd like to see them all just come on the committee and a board member should join them, and I'd be glad to do that if we want to do that.
I'm happy to talk to you sometime, Dean, about why it devolved from a committee to a work group.
Sure. And
I mean, it has to do with board members constantly quitting the committee, at which point I just got tired of having to reinvent the wheel every time a new board member came on and deal with suggestions that weren't valuable, that were time consuming, that took time to explain. It was offensive to people to be told that their idea wasn't something that would work well. I just kind of gave up, and now it's all professionals who understand, like, you know, we're not going to do pie day. We're not going to ask our volunteers to make pies and sell them to the public. It has nothing to do with WORT. We don't have kitchens, you know, we don't have to go through that. We don't have to go through that anymore.
Can I propose that Susan and Dean talk about this and make a recommendation, and we'll talk about it again at the next meeting?
Yeah, let's do that, Susan.
Sounds great.
I understand what you're
Sounds
saying completely, and let's see if we can put our heads together and kick this around more. Thanks.
I would suggest making it through all of the existing committees and assigning people before suggesting to invent or to reactivate others. No diss to Dean. I just there are a lot, and we got to make it through them and assign people. So there's one that might catch your interest.
Very good. Prom is also inactive at this time. If people want to reactivate that, I'm open to that discussion, but since it's not active at this time, we're not going to do that. We're not, regulatory compliance is not meeting, and Shally and Tom work on that and talk with me about that, but we don't actually have a committee meetings on that. We deal with problems as they come up or need to be dealt with.
Yeah, that one could probably go away, I would say.
But it's in the policy, so we have to make it officially go away through the Policies and Bylaws Committee if we want to do that.
That would be a quick thing for the Bylaws Committee to knock out, but yeah, I mean, staff hasn't taken care of. There's institutional knowledge, like that one can go away.
Engineering Committee is something that meets the second Tuesday of every month. I've tried to list everybody who's on Engineering Committee. Not all of those people go all the time. Anybody is welcome to come to that meeting, talk to Tom or to I to be put on that committee.
We should probably talk about this one, Dave, because there's some names on there that should probably come off permanently.
Tom, yeah, okay.
Well, no, Tom Christie's probably fine. He does
Oh.
some things here. Rick Campbell definitely needs to come off completely.
Joanne rarely attends meetings, but she's still interested, I think.
And she's so much fun when she's there.
Yes.
Maybe you guys can clean this up offline.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Events committee. It's a special committee. It's not something that's required in the bylaws. And Doug and Susan and a number of people meet informally to deal with that.
I'm actually not on that committee. It is
Okay.
specifically for events that
Okay.
Doug is in charge of.
Okay.
So he, it's Ralph Shively, and I don't know, do you have a list of who's on it on there?
I don't right now.
It's the people that generally he has in charge of, either musicians for WORT, which is Ralph, or that do appear almost regularly at any events that he has. So
Right.
it's limited to like 4 or 5 people.
I would be
And
interested
it's
in the
really,
event.
it's
Yep.
really driven by the commitment to appear at all of Doug's events.
Rosie is interested.
No, I
No,
think
Rebecca.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
thank
Who was
you.
that? Oh, I'm sorry.
It was Rebecca, not Rosie. Not being rude.
No, fixing Dave. Dave needs a lot of fixing. Programming committee is next. I need to stop and say the programming committee address is pc@wordfm.org. The personnel committee, which also starts with P and C, but it's personnel@wordfm.org. Just so you know, there's a difference there. Don't say, when you confuse them and say, I think Dave is a total idiot and he should be, disciplined. Don't send that to the personnel committee. We need to have a board liaison for the programming committee.
Now it's Rosie.
That's wonderful. I would love to have you, Rosie.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
And if more people are interested in, it's not limited, right?
Yes.
So you could have more folks who are interested. Certainly active committee.
It's a
Be
very active
interested.
committee.
I would be interested in this actually.
I would love to have you, Kai. That would be great.
Great.
Yes. I think some members of the programming committee are a little overextended, and having people available to lend their time would be great.
I can't spell. Thank you, Kai.
We good.
We got it. I wanted to say things are happening in my earphones, reminders of other things that I have to be doing, but I'm trying to ignore them and concentrate, and that's really hard. And now
Hey,
somebody's
after
calling
everything
me.
that's happened in the last 24 hours, we're just glad you're here at all.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I wanted to say about the programming committee that when we were in the formation stage of the radio station before it had call letters, we would have meetings that would last for 6 or 8 hours. And we tried to do consensus decisions, and it was really hard. And people were arguing about what day of the week and what time of the day the XYZ programming, the jazz programming, or the feminist collective programming, or the blues. And we had to keep saying, no, we don't have a radio station. We don't have turntables. We don't have a tower. It's too early to talk about programs. And those kind of programming questions can really get a board thrashing. So I really value the work of a programming committee to deal with the complex issues when music changes, when hosts change, when new music styles come up, and so on. Those are hard questions to deal with. And I love the fact that there's a programming committee out there to help make those decisions, to evaluate our hosts, and to make recommendations to the board. And then the board accepts those recommendations or refers them back to the committee for further research or questions. So,
Dave,
yes,
while you're sitting there, you might want to make, I don't have the document open in the drive, or I would just do it for you, but the footer should be changed so that new folks know that this is updated, okay? At some point. You know how I am about files. You can just double click.
no, you can't. It's not letting me do that. Thank you.
If you
Oh,
send me a
Kai,
link,
thank you.
there you go.
Kai is doing it because he figured out how to do it. It was frustrating to me. Kai, we're a team. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Okay, other people who would like to be in programming? All right, moving on. We used to have a facilities planning committee. It's an ad hoc committee. We don't need anybody else right now doing that. But I would love to hear from people who say, we need to repaint the building, or we need to redo the roof, or other recommendations, and we will get together and have a ad hoc meeting with Tom and whoever else we need to discuss those issues. The COVID-19 task force is right now myself, Stu Shalley, Tom Jones, and Arlene Zaucha. Other members are welcome to be in the COVID-19 task force. This task force is not a committee, it's just a task force. It meets as needed. If a decision is needed, for instance, the question about whether we require people who come back to have vaccines, which is now the current requirement, should we change that, and so on. Those are questions that would go before the staff and the COVID-19 task force, and then the task force would make a recommendation to the board, and the board would decide to adopt or not adopt. Anybody interested?
Today, a question came up when the board members are going into the building and we're trying to turn in our cards. Who is the rep on the staff we're supposed to turn it into?
I vote for Tom.
So this brings up an interesting question, actually. I don't think the board is included in the reopening plan and technically not supposed to be in the station.
Because I have orientation and I have to be in the treasurer's office along with a couple other people next Wednesday. So I need to know who to turn the card into so I can have access to files and whatnot.
Rosie, you can just show me, that's fine.
Okay, thanks,
But I
Tom.
trust you in the meantime, so I'm not overly worried about it.
Okay, thank you.
That might be something for the COVID committee to look at, Dave, is technically it's not included.
Yes. Little details. It's the little details.
Yeah.
Well, especially because this could come back to bite us again.
Yes.
With the new variant.
Yes.
This could be ugly.
A number of places are starting to reinstate mask requirements and so on. So that's why the whole COVID-19 response of WORT has been so cautious, very tiptoey, and not jumping in broadly. So there's a social media work group. It's as needed.
We would need a new, I'm not the board member on that one. Haven't been for quite a long time. Do you want to take me off?
I will delete that row.
Thank you.
I think that group can work cohesively when we can all meet in person. I think everyone is overextended on that committee in addition to new staff. So that's one that's like inactive right now, would suggest starting up when things get a little less crazy.
Well, and Kai's on it, isn't he? Is Kai?
Yes.
Yeah, I was on it from prior to the board.
So we could just change his position from volunteer to board. And we
Sure.
got to keep it anyway. I'm volunteering you.
You volunteered me. Okay. I see how this works now.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Adrian, Susan, Alita, Megan, Ankur.
So this brings up one other thing for the entire list for everyone. I have a Zoom meeting room that we use so infrequently but have to pay for to keep. So if any committees, any work groups, anybody would like to use it, you just email me and I'll give you access. Like Megan has access for the DEI committee. So it's free for WORT if anybody needs to use it.
So I should also mention that this Zoom account that we're using right now is for the Center for Change or Community Shares organization. And they purchased a Zoom account that they share with all of their members. And it's not heavily used. And I early on booked all of the board meetings for 2021. But I would be willing to add others to that meeting. I think Tom has used it for other things. So you're welcome to contact me or Tom so either way. Yes, iPhone?
Hi, sorry again. I would also suggest Google Meet. All of you should have at WORTFM.org email addresses. If you don't, talk to Tom. But that we pay for an organizational Google account. So you can use Google Meet, and the free version of just a regular email, Gmail, it would expire after an hour, but it doesn't do that when you use your at WORT-FM email address. It's easy to use. I'm happy to show you how to use it. It's what we use for live virtual broadcasting 99% of the time. And it also integrates into Google Calendar. So you can create a meeting in your calendar, turn on Google Meet settings, and then invite people, and everyone has the link pretty much immediately. So
thank you.
Highly recommend.
The only time that Zoom is better than Google Meet is if you have to record the meeting like tonight.
Yes. And fantastic. Now, are there any other people who want to be on diversity, equity, and inclusion? That is the end of committees. Holy cow, we just make this. Go ahead.
Dave, I think I need to correct my previous response to Susan. I've been looking through the various documents and I do not see an actual stated requirement for board members to serve on 2 committees. So I'm continuing to look for that, but I'm not finding that as, I mean, there's an expectation that board members will do work outside the actual board meetings themselves, but I'm not finding that specific requirement of service on 2 committees.
Was this like an understood rule that was like spoken across people, between people? Is this?
Yep.
It's our oral history. We have a storyteller who sits down and tells us about this stuff.
Only that we're positioned.
Even I started too.
Hey, Dave, a couple questions. So there were 3 committees you said were inactive. What was, I have fundraising, prom, and what was the other one for the minutes?
Was that the compliance one? Facilities or regulatory compliance?
Well, facilities planning isn't really active.
Well, I have fundraising and prom weren't active. And then I lost the other one, I forgot it.
Well, facilities isn't active.
Okay, then that's it.
Was it events? Because that's like
regulatory compliance right now is the other that's inactive.
Regulatory compliance. Well, what about is facilities? You mentioned facilities. Is that active or not?
Facilities is Dave and I right now. It's pretty inactive unless we have funding or anything.
Okay, but it exists. The others don't even meet. So let's
right.
There's been talk about integrating facilities into the engineering committee, but
Dave, would you also add me to personnel? I wanted to go all the way through with all of them before, but I think I want to sit in on that at this point.
I am backing and yes. Done. It is made so. Thank you.
Dave, can you also add me to the diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Is that Rebecca?
Yes, ma'am.
Yay.
That's great.
I
Welcome.
think that you're a good addition to that.
Thank you.
I want to say to people that this is the best committee assignments session that I have been to in a long time. You all have done super great. Thank you very much.
Not to be a stickler about things, Dave, but I believe in my review, I also know that people are appointed to committees by virtue of a vote of the board. So I would move to have the board ratify and implement all the self-selections of that people have made for their committee service.
Second.
Second, was that Rosie?
Yes, Dean, it was.
Thanks.
No worries.
So the motion is to approve committee self-selection. And then I will refer to the document that we just finished filling out. So Stu has moved, Rosie has seconded. Is there any discussion about this motion? All in favor say aye or raise their hands.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no or give us a thumbs down. Are there any abstentions? Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
Isn't DEI technically a work group?
Yes.
Is it a committee? Okay. Why is that? I was just wondering. Maybe we can have a side conversation.
No, that's a good
Okay, cool.
conversation because that's a detail that it's important. A committee has regular meetings that are scheduled and that are public, and a work group is not required to meet regularly, and just reports back to the board and what they've done. So it's a less formal thing, and there is no mandatory monthly meetings for those.
I think when Susan and I introduced the idea, we suggested it be a work group at first because there's just like less boring bureaucratic work you have to do essentially of putting it on the events calendar and submitting a report every time. You don't have to do that if you're a work group. It's a little less informal, but you still have kind of all the power. So that's one.
I think part of the reason that motivated me was that there are some very sensitive discussions that we might be having about particular behaviors, or I just thought there were a lot of sensitive discussions that I didn't necessarily want people who weren't part of WORT and didn't understand the whole picture to be privy to.
Okay.
So I didn't want it to be an open meeting. I thought that would really stifle, when we get into some of the nitty-gritty stuff, some of that discussion. It would stifle me from talking about things. If it were an open or recorded meeting, I wouldn't talk about them.
Sure. That makes sense. Okay, well, thanks for explaining that.
But of course, you know, is it Megan Elliott?
What's up?
Who was asking the question? I'm sorry, I can't see you.
This was Megan, aka Elliot.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Megan, it can always be changed. I mean, if all of us want to change it, or if the board suggests changing it, I'm just giving you the background about why when Shally and I set it up, we were looking at two things. One, a lot of us were overextended, and it's like, can we reduce the bureaucracy of this thing and remembering to get it on the calendar when it kept changing times, and then we had to be a week out if we changed the time. But the other thing was also dealing with discussion of sensitive issues that audiences outside of WORT would be able to listen to.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious, just kind of when we were talking about fundraising earlier, I'm like, oh, the fundraising work group versus committee. It's like, well, fundraising is very important. Why isn't this committee? It's like, well, and then I thought, well, DEI is very important. What's the difference? So thanks for explaining.
Okay, I'm going to try to speed us up a little bit for this meeting. It's going long.
Thanks.
We're all running out of juice. There are a number of reports from staff, and I'm going to trust that you all have read them. The only ones that have action items that I know of are the News, Talk, and Public Affairs report from Shally. And she had two action items. One is appointing a programming committee board rep. Ding, that's done. And the second question that Shally wanted us to address is reopening to some vaxxed news reporters and news talk hosts. Shally, are you still on the call?
I am. I accidentally ended up in safe driving mode on my phone, but I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to speak. I'll be brief, not 12 minutes. Essentially, those of you who know, we have a reopening plan, right, which was passed several months ago. And so we entered phase one, bringing back vaccinated engineers and music hosts who are unable to do their shows from home, record their shows from home. So we've done that. The music department has done wonderfully, and the news too, bringing back folks. My issue that I'm encountering is kind of multi-fold, but essentially in short, I think we've reached the time. I know that people are concerned about the Delta variant. Breakthrough infections of unvaccinated people are low, like 0.0 something. So I'm not too concerned. We would still follow all the same protocols that we established when we set the reopening plan. It seems like we have moved into phase two already without a formal codification. And I'm asking that also essentially be extended to News and Talk volunteers. To give you a little more background, I have a number of vacancies of engineers that have built up over the past year and a half. You know, usually they happen naturally and I can fill them. When we're not having engineers in the station until recently, they just kind of all built up. It's very difficult to onboard new engineers. It's already a complicated thing to do for people who sometimes usually don't have training or background in that, to then expect them to also use virtual software, which does goof up all the time. I did it for months and months and months, and it is hard just to do. So onboarding those folks is tough. And then a lot of our reporters are students. And so given that they are students and they're volunteering during the summer, they've been volunteering and they might never get the chance to come into the station. And that makes me very sad because we're training them to be professionals. I'd like them to have at least some experience with radio equipment, and you know, it is easier to do at the station. So for those people who will be leaving in late August, I'd like to extend it to them. And then, yeah, I think we've already kind of reached that. We've brought back can, and I'd just like to move forward. So yeah, thanks.
A little point of clarification, can you refine the ask? Dave, are we actually looking to take a vote on something?
So
we're still in
it's-
discussion.
Well, if
So,
we do, then
yeah.
oh, all right, then when we get to it, someone could please be concise about the motion.
I would basically, less than a vote, I'd just like to have the board's okay, which I know it sounds different, but we did already agree upon this in a reopening plan, and that was formed by the COVID task force. Basically, I would like to give you a heads up and just like have your blessing that we're doing this. I don't want to wait to go to the COVID task force because that devolves and takes several months to happen. And, I'm trying to make things happen now, essentially. And it's not going to be everyone, and not everyone is going to want to come back. It's as needed. And frankly, I think this has been happening on the music side just without asking your permission. So I'm just letting you know.
I'd move to authorize Shally to approve news and talk volunteers and engineers to return to the station in a procedure not inconsistent with adopted policies after discussion with the staff collective.
We'll second
Thank
that.
you. I would amend not quite
Hold on,
engineers.
Things are going too faster. Things are going too faster. Stand by. Dean, Stu made the motion. Kai seconded the motion.
Yeah, I need, Stu, could you write that, what you
Well,
just?
Well, first I want to hear what Shally is requesting.
And I want to comment too. So,
Shally,
Oh,
how do I
boy.
need to improve it?
That was great, except you said engineers, and I just want to change that to select news and talk hosts and reporters.
That's what I meant.
Great.
In a manner not inconsistent with adopted policies after consultation with the collective. Does that work for you?
can
The
I?
Amazing.
collective has already approved this, by the way.
Well, we
I-
like half approved it as I was on my way out.
Hold on, Shally. Is this in accordance with the policy we already adopted?
Yes, which is my action item where I was just going to say, this is where we were at. We're through phase 1. We're into phase 2 as part of what was already adopted. And people are coming back and everything is as we had envisioned it when we started going through this. So this was already adopted a couple of months ago, actually.
So my point is that we don't have to take an action if it's been approved.
Correct.
That's great. My understanding was we would just like let the board know.
Exactly. We were just letting
There we go.
It was just a heads up to say this is where we're at in the process.
You comfortable, Stu?
Sure. If Shally and Tom are comfortable with that, fine.
Yep.
Great. Then action item unactioned.
Same
Okay.
here.
I did have something that at the beginning of my report that's labeled as a board request, but it was a request for a future active item for the next board meeting or sometime in the future.
Happy to do that on the next board agenda.
Okay, so you'll automatically put it on the agenda, or what do I need to do?
Put it in your report as an action item and it will be automatically on our agenda.
Right. So I need to put it in the next board report, even though on this one it says request to board. That was my top line of my report.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't say action, okay. I've called them board request in the past, and it's been treated as action items.
What is your request?
To review key fundraising metrics with the board.
I saw that, and I would like to ask you to talk with Rosie and with Mary Joy and Doug, and I don't think the board needs to approve that. I think you can just do that.
No, it's something that I think I'm seeing it as part of an orientation to fundraising.
Um,
I think that the metrics of fundraising are something that very few people understand in depth, the return on investment, how things are calculated, and a bunch of different things that are really important to our income stream.
but we don't need to approve that. You can just do that.
Excuse, this is Dean. Maybe there's an opportunity for Susan to provide us with a board training specifically on this issue at the next board.
That was what I was trying to say, Dean. It wasn't writing things out. It was having the ability to present you with written stuff and then to talk through real life examples of how that works and answer questions about it.
Yeah, I would think that would be pretty valuable to us for especially the new board members to understand what the actual mechanism of fundraising is and how it works. So I think a good training on that next board meeting would be helpful. So,
or the meeting after. You guys have a lot of stuff to cover. I'm not pressing for the next one. I just want to get on the schedule.
Fine.
I also think that a lot of what you're talking about, when I heard you say that, it seems like it lends itself to a very visual medium, like perhaps like charts or graphs in some way. So I don't know if, yeah, that's
exactly. I have a lot of the information. That's how I have a lot of the information, because visually it's easier to picture for me too.
Fully support that. Fully support that. I actually want Rosie and Mary Joy to work with QuickBooks. I've asked Wegner Accounting if they would consider giving us recommendations of what items a board needs to look at in terms of what I would call a dashboard in terms of where our funding situation is. WORT has an annual cycle of cash flow. There's not a pledge drive every month. And so we have peaks and valleys of income and peaks and valleys of expenses. And some of them are planned and some of them are unplanned when things blow up. But I would very strongly support that. We've in the past 24 months not done very well on that. So thank you very much for pushing for that, and let's continue to work on that. Do you need us to take action right now? Is that what you're saying?
Were you addressing me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. No, I just want to say, if there's any point, like if you guys you're going to have a very full agenda, I feel, for the next meeting.
Yep.
If that doesn't fit into your next meeting, I'm fine having stuff for you for the meeting afterward. I'm leaving it up to the board to determine what priority you give it.
It's pretty important. In fact, and we're going to get into new business about Dean's proposals of how we address the issue of the older donor base and the attracting younger listeners, newer listeners. So that's very important, Susan. Thank you.
Okay, I can have it ready for August then.
Okay. I believe that's the end of reports. I don't recall any other action items, and so help me out if I've missed any. Then that brings us to new business, and Stu had written, there are three things to deal with here. Stu had written a policy for hiring part-time staff for full-time position without an open hiring process. The WORT Staff Collective put together a document with their ideas. And then Susan posted an email to us just minutes before the board started. And I don't have that in front of me. So
it's in the folder for our meeting.
I know, but we haven't had a chance for board members to peruse all of that. So
I do apologize. I was trying to get a hold of the people that were on vacation and stuff,
right,
to have more extensive approval, because it went through iterations with different suggestions, and this was the closest I could get to having something that I thought took into account what all people wanted. So I apologize.
And actually, Dave, the order was, the first item was the collective's request for the policy. My proposed policy was a response to staff's request. And then what Susan provided us early this evening was staff's response to my proposal. So that's the order of how it proceeded. I think this needs to, at the very least, go to policy and bylaws, because that's what it's there for, and it's given the considerable detail in staff's response to my fairly succinct proposal. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be reviewed and reflected upon. And I think that we owe to the process to at least have the committee look at it at least once prior to the next meeting.
Can I say, I asked Aaron for permission to say this. So I just want to reassure you that I'm not talking outside of, just personal knowledge that I have from conversations with him. He told me he wasn't going to be at this meeting, and I said, can I share this with the board? So I know some board members feel a sense of urgency that Aaron has been working part-time on an interim basis, but not being treated like a full-time person, a full-time staff member as far as benefits and stuff. And I feel like there's a push, like we have to have him have this thing. And he wanted to just have you know, he doesn't need, although if he were to become a full-time staff member, he would use our health and dental. Right now he is covered for free under somebody else's. There's no pressing need to get health and dental benefits. He agrees with the staff policy that is suggested. He knows that that might prolong him becoming a full-time staff member if that happens for a month or two or even 3, and he's also fine with that. So I just want to let you know that the arguments about what Aaron wants or what Aaron feels or how he might feel like he's been misled or stuff are not borne out by what he says.
Yeah.
I would like to point out that it's my understanding of the collective bargaining agreement that if somebody works full-time, then that qualifies them for membership in the staff collective.
Not when they've been appointed to full-time for an interim reason having to do with an emergency, Dave. And the pandemic was considered an emergency. It does not violate our collective bargaining agreement. I already checked on that.
Hey, Dave, I think Stu's recommendation is the way we ought to go, and I think the president can direct Stu to set a meeting of the policy committee to review this.
Excuse me, we do have a meeting scheduled, I believe. I don't have my calendar in front of me right now, but we can meet in a timely manner. I do not expect to be at our August meeting due to a previous conflict, but the policy and bylaws will be able to take this up prior to that August meeting.
I would also like to suggest that in the staff collective response, DEI was also brought up. And I've also heard this from board members in previous discussion from last meeting, including Marla, that just wanting to bring this through DEI and also have them look at that as well as a committee. I think I would propose doing that.
I don't think we need to have a formal referral to DEI in order for you to consider, for DEI to consider that issue. So feel free to put that on your next meeting agenda and discuss it and make a recommendation back to us. Stu, do you?
Well, I mean, given, I think to give it the significance that it deserves, I think there should be a formal board referral both to policy and bylaws and DEI. I think that would be appropriate.
I agree, Stu.
So I'd make the motion to refer to both policy and bylaws, and DEI.
I'm writing.
With a directive to return a recommendation in time for the August board meeting.
Mhm.
Second.
One other thing is, in case it's possible, I mean, I also don't want to slow this down. Is there any reason to not ask the finance committee to look at feasibility while we're at it? I mean, was there a feasibility study done? I know Doug said we have plenty of money in the budget for this year, you know, Glenn's leaving, blah, blah, blah. But that, to me, didn't address the fact that we've hired people before and then met the fact that we, you know, basically if Tim and Tom didn't leave at the time they did, we wouldn't have been able to afford their salaries any longer. That still kind of haunts me.
I think it was extrapolated out for 3 years, if I remember correctly.
Stand by, Stu. Would you consider a friendly amendment to your motion to include finance?
Sure. I'm not sure how dispositive a 3-year projection is going to be in our deliberations, but there's certainly nothing wrong with having that information as part of our consideration.
Yeah, my only problem with the previous one was that I didn't have a part in saying how generous the increases in our funding were going to be year to year, and my figures do not bear out a regular 5% increase over the next 3 years.
Fine, we'll deal with that. Who seconded this motion?
I think Megan did.
No, I did.
Oh, Dean did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Dean did.
And I've got the amendment, so we're good to go on this. If there's any other discussion, Davey.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 All opposed
Aye.
say. Kai, did you vote?
Yes, I said aye.
Okay, thank you. Are there any no votes? Are there any abstentions? Thank you. The motion carries. Dean, you had requested a discussion of the older donor base question.
Yeah, these are not proposals. I just wanted to bring it to the board that I think that these are two major issues that I believe we should spend some time on figuring out how to address them. I don't have a solution to offer. I have no board resolution to bring. But I think that my big takeaway I got out of the annual meeting was that this is an issue that again has popped up, and it is not new. So I would suggest that we have a brief discussion here today on what do other board members feel is the right process we can use to address this. And one of the things that I thought was that we have a full board staff strategic planning session where this is one of the items on the agenda of that session. That's one possible way of addressing it, where we cannot resolve it, but figure out a plan that we can begin to start addressing it and then put it in play. That's my my point on both those issues.
Do you think it fits in an existing committee wheelhouse?
No, because of history. As you know, and others has been on this board, this is a long-standing issue. It was an issue we tried to address when I was on the board 7 years ago.
Susan, can I mute you?
That isn't me.
Oh, okay.
Well, I have something wrong with my that little clicking sounds. That's mine. I don't know what it is.
There's chiming going on, and I don't know what it is. So
yeah,
Not mine.
it's mine. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Like there's
When there's like a
extension being plugged in and out. And
I'm done talking, so I'll mute.
Right.
Can I ask Susan a question about this? I mean, this is obviously a matter of prime importance. Susan, do you know, is the issue ultimately one of programming or one of delivery formats?
I don't think, I grant that I've read a lot about this. I would argue that there is much more out there that we don't know. I think the step to add that was, I unfortunately resisted for so long, to add our own app is, for instance, a step in the right direction, because younger people don't use the apps that, congregate. They just don't. It's in, you can look it up. Some do, majority don't. I think there's programming issues myself. I think that there's also issues that you're never going to get people to start buying radios. What is the streaming experience like? People say things like, younger people listen to podcasts. We can't just throw a podcast out there. We need to know what kind of podcast younger people listen to. And do we have the ability to create a podcast that runs, when you're saying that they listen to podcasts, they listen to podcasts produced by some of our best creative talent of telling stories, of doing sound, of writing and doing all those things. So if we don't have things on those levels where we have that great storytelling, like
I don't want to get into the details right now. I want to get into the mechanics of what we do.
I think it's a cross section. I think programming, there's going to be looking at programming. I think there's going to be looking at technology and platforms. I think there's going to be looking at things that are being done right now at community radio stations that they have seen the effect of increasing younger donors, younger volunteers, and younger listeners. And I think it's not going to be so much us throwing out ideas as us doing a lot more research on what actually works instead of throwing things at the wall, which I feel is what I've seen done. So that's my opinion.
Can I add that I also think that technically that's also a diversity and equity inclusion issue as well, when you're thinking about the diversity of the youth and the groups of the ages and demographics that you're looking at.
Hold on. I'm trying to get at the fact that we're trying to create a committee, that the board is trying to create a committee. Is this correct?
Yeah, I think that's one possible way of creating an ad hoc committee around what both the last two speakers just added, and create a charge to that ad hoc. Perhaps that's another way of addressing it specifically as opposed to a strategic planning session. I think we're getting more at maybe that's the possible way to go.
My only suggestion is, do you think that some of these committees that we have already should maybe add this to something they talk about, so that those three things can be presented in making the actual committee? You know what I'm saying? Like, what would the fundraising look like? What are their concerns? How are we going to be reaching some of these that might be in diversity? It might be a marketing piece, etc. But just kind of have the committees grab some information so that so that we know really what that committee then could run with. Does that make sense?
Hang on.
I would love to think to.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Susan.
I'd love to see
Shelly's
a document.
had her hand up.
Let Dave.
Sorry.
Let everybody raise their hand if they want to get in, please.
Shelly's had her hand up.
I have my hand raised.
Okay.
Right,
I'll get to you second, Susan. Shelly, please.
I've had so many thoughts in the last 5 minutes. I guess I would just like to be on whatever committee is being formed, because I have lots of thoughts about this. How many people looked at the web analytics thing I said in my board report, just out of curiosity?
I did.
Great, thank you. So if you'll notice that one interview had more hits than our entire Listen Live stream, right?
Yeah.
And so my perspective is that investing in news and current events can work. our producer, Jonah Chester, used to work for a company that made podcasts for Fortune 500 companies. He will tell you that local news podcasts are never profitable, right? You can't make, they're a great community service if you have that money. I would suggest that grants to do news and information, which is part of what Susan and I are doing anyway, is a huge step in that direction. And investing in the resources to reliably create content, put it on the website.
Okay, we're making
content-
suggestions, not
Yeah, that's
individual. And I
Okay,
want to get more about the structure. Susan.
Sure.
Dave, my
sorry.
suggestion is that I agree with, and I think it was Megan, the idea that different committees put this under their umbrella of like, what are our ideas as part of that committee for this, to refer to a super committee, if you will, and that
That was
staff also
Rebecca.
have the ability to put these into Google Docs. My idea of a committee is also part of whatever that super committee is identifying some of the roadblocks.
Thank you, Stu.
So for instance, if we have a fossilized program schedule that's the same host and largely the same shows for the last 20 years, is that a roadblock to getting younger listeners? Just throwing out ideas of where are the roadblocks. So that's the end of mine. But I think both the committees and staff who personally have observed things within their department, like Shali has and stuff, should have a chance, and board members, to all contribute to a Google Doc that says, here are some thoughts on how to.
Thank you.
What is a problem or what would be great, like diversity. Thanks.
Wrapping you. Stu, go ahead.
It's not the work for a super committee. It's the work for a full board staff retreat. This is too fundamental and too existential. We can have the committees and the work groups and staff do prep work. And on Susan's last point, I want to know the correlation between fundraising and those legacy shows, because my impression is that the legacy shows are some of the best fundraising shows we've got. Some of the more youth-oriented shows may not be the more successful, but I'd like to see what those numbers are. But this is not the work of a committee. This is the work of the full board and staff.
I agree.
I agree too.
Yeah.
I hate to be a naysayer, but I can't get people to come to a blankety blank board meeting. So if we schedule a retreat, it's not going to be just a 1 or 2 hour retreat. It's going to be several hours, and it actually is going to take probably multiple sessions, because people are going to have to get together and talk like this discussion we've just had. And then we have to set down some guidelines and some writing and figure out what direction we're going to go in and do our research, and then come back and meet. And it will be a series of steps of choosing a direction and making some changes and seeing what happens. But everybody has something good to say here, but we have to figure out how to focus it and channel it.
Maybe once, if you got it Googled. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't see anyone. I'll wait till after the next hand.
Dean had a question first. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, this is if you can raise your hand, and Dave will make a cue, and then he can just pick people so no one will interrupt anyone else. But
I can't see anyone, Dean.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let Dave just yell it out, and then he'll call, or whoever else.
Yep.
No one can talk until Dave says you're on. So let's make a cue. And I got the cue right now, and I'm sorry for this damn thing that's happened to my computer. But I think that I agree with Stuart. This needs a full discussion. And yeah, David, there are always the logistic problems of gathering people together, but this is our responsibility. We have to find a time where we're board and staff can do it. Why we might want to consider a facilitator to organize this thing for us, and then we set the agenda, and then we ask for reports. Susan's got already some reports in the queue that will be useful. There are other staff members that could give us do some review and create some information. So when we gather, we're not just throwing out ideas. We've got data reports to review that we can already preview. We have to have all this information. We all have to study it prior to this meeting, and then have a I believe it'd be worth it to hire a facilitator or manage this thing and keep us on track so that discussion, people just don't start pitching in whenever they feel like it. It has to be a very organized process so that it stays on track. And maybe we can make a lot of progress in one meeting, where at the end of that meeting, we create work groups that will work on specific things. But that's would be one way to format a strategic planning session where board and staff members required to come and become prepared.
That's fine. I'm okay. I'm trying to wrap us to end this meeting. Susan, you had more?
Yeah, the only thing I have to say is, I think this meeting wouldn't necessarily be issuing strict policy after the thing, so I don't see the issue of a quorum. If you aren't interested enough in this issue as a board or staff member to attend, I'm happy that you don't attend.
Okay, is this an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting?
I think it depends on when you're having it. I do want to point out the fact that there are people at the station, including myself, who have no idea whether the shot was effective due to the autoimmune disease and the drugs I'm taking. We have other people who are receiving drugs for cancer treatment and chemotherapy and other people. And so, the idea to push to be here makes me really
that solves a lot of problems
right now.
It's hard to get a venue right now, and so that's good. Dean, question?
That's a decision we can make as a specific, and certainly we can accommodate people that can't be there physically, but some of us can. We can figure that out as we go, but we offer both options. This is hard to do over a Zoom meeting. I prefer to be doing it in person. So I think there's a way we can accommodate everyone who wants to be there. And I disagree with Susan. If you're a staff and a board member, we're going to require people to be at this thing. It's not, well, I don't want, if you feel like showing up. We got responsibilities here. As a board member, we signed on. Staff members are unpaid. They're getting paid for this. This is the issue of the future of the station. If you're not interested in it, then you better look for another job, or you should resign. So this is important issues, and that's how I think it should go.
With all due respect, though, we do have to respect health concerns and issues. I value everything you're saying, and I agree, but we are in a really strange state of time right now that it's just kind of, I feel like the option could be there and we could accommodate. That's just my thought.
Yeah, hybrid, make it a hybrid meeting, but Dean's right. This is fundamental. If you're not interested in how we're going to survive, what are you doing here?
Yep.
I'm just saying that's not part of our, that there's a specific thing about what are the responsibilities of board members. It says, so many meetings that you can miss or whatever. There's nothing in there that says if you don't attend what does the station do about our new donors, you're out the door. You guys can say this is required, but unless you're creating and voting on a policy, you don't have a real enforcement mechanism. That's all I'm pointing out.
Peer group pressure, Susan.
Yeah.
Public shaming is always good, Stu. I'm always in favor of it.
All right, I need to wrap us up. So how do we come together to make this proposal? Can we sit together with the people who are interested, email me, and we'll set up a meeting in the next few days? Dean?
Yeah, you could do that, or this is a good item that the executive committee can address and make an executive decision on how to go about doing it. Take what the discussion that you heard today and figure out the best way to go forward. Send out a doodle candle or doodle calendar to figure out a good day to do it. Might have to be a Saturday. Staff gets paid and we have food for those that are there. We accommodate everything, take it all into account. That's one way of doing it, either through the executive committee or set up a separate committee. I think either way is good.
Okay, Dean, I'm sorry, Stu?
I think that you're a step ahead of where we're at, Dean. I think the first thing we need to do is have the committees and staff do the preparatory work of identifying what the questions are, identifying where to find the answers, identifying what the policy choices we need to make are, and then once we have the committees do that spade work, committees and staff do the spade work. Then we talk about, then we get to scheduling the meeting and come together with that preparatory work already done. So,
Yeah.
so I think what the executive committee needs to do is identify the questions, identify where we'll find the answers, identify the policy choices that need to be made, farm those out to the committees and staff, and have them do a couple of weeks or months worth of work or 2 months worth of work, getting that information. Then we schedule the staff and board retreat.
Stu, do you think that we as an executive committee can just take this on, or do we need a formal referral from the board? I think just do it.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
I
And then
think
is
if
there any
the
objections?
executive,
I'm sorry, Susan?
I just think if the executive committee that wanted to have any input, that set up something that we could put our things we already know on, that might help you with
Right,
some of your work.
The executive committee will solicit suggestions on
Great.
information, the policies, and the
Yes.
where to find the information. And then
Yes.
Great.
after we receive that information, we'll process it and then farm it out formally to the committees and staff.
Yes.
So is
Great.
there consensus on that as a way to proceed?
Yes. Rebecca, did you comment?
No, I was just gonna say I agree with what Stu's suggestion is.
Great. Wonderful. I think we have a wrap for this meeting. I don't think we need to do a closed session. Go ahead, Stu.
Well, I was going to ask about that, but if our previous discussion made that, obviated the need for that, that's fine, and we can move adjournment.
I think it obviated that.
Okay.
It's a mute point, as my sister likes to say.
Moot or mute?
She
M-O-O-T.
says mute. She says mute.
Yeah.
We're not talking about it. It's mute.
Stu, did you just move?
Yeah.
Stu moved for adjournment. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And
As we know, this is the longest meeting we've had in, I think, 3 years.
Yes.
It's the new board members' fault. Y'all thought.
This is average. This is going to be the new average. You're trying to acclimate.
Who seconded?
Oh, God.
Megan seconded.
Okay, then we got to vote.
I'm just trying to catch up on my notes. So all in favor of adjournment, raise your hand or give me a thumbs up.
Thumbs up verbally.
And all opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very, very much.